What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's project is this Honda lawnmower, and the problem is that it stopped running while being used and it wouldn't start again. Let's take a good look at it, find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we try and repair this mower. However, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. So we do have some information about what happened to this mower. However, the information doesn't completely add up. What that means is what little information we do have could prove to be more confusing than helpful. Now, in this situation, we're going to overlook some of the details we were told and only look at the major issues we find. The first thing I want to do is take a look around the mower and check for any obvious problems. An important fact we need to consider about this mower is its age, because it's well over 30 years old. That means we could have more than one reason why this mower isn't working. Now, overall though, this mower is in great shape except for the wheels, which have some cracks in them, but they're still working quite well. The first issue we see is that the pull rope handle is missing. That means we'll need to replace it at some point. However, if we need to, we could use a socket and drill on the flywheel bolt to start the engine. The next thing I want to look at are the fluids, starting with the gas in the tank. Now, if there's some water in the gas, that could cause the engine to stop running, so we may have to drain the gas out of the tank to inspect it later on. The next thing I want to look at is the oil in the engine, and this is when things start to look less promising for the engine. If we take out the dipstick from the filler neck, on first sight it looks like there's oil in the engine. However, to get a correct reading on the oil level, you need to clean the dipstick and then reinsert it back into the filler neck without threading it in. The label on the engine cover shows that it only needs to be pressed against the threads to get a reading. After removing the dipstick, we can see there's no oil on it. That means that the oil level is somewhere below the recommended minimal level, which I hate to say could cause the engine to overheat and stop running. Now, I do believe there's some oil in the engine, just not enough to keep it running for a long period of time. This is when we come to our second problem. If I pull on the rope, it appears to be stuck, and more than likely what's happened is that the engine got so hot that the piston and rings expanded and got stuck in the cylinder. Now, we should be able to free the engine now that it's cooled down, but we're not going to try to free the engine by pulling on the rope, as it could damage the recoil. Instead, we're going to remove the recoil and use a ratchet on the flywheel bolt to break it free. Luckily, the recoil works just fine, and it's probably because the guide plate and the pawls are made out of metal and not plastic. It is a bit squeaky, so I might have to lubricate it later on. Next, I'll put a socket and ratchet on the bolt and try to break the engine free. Hopefully this won't damage the engine any further, but I hate to say it, most of the damage was probably already done by running the engine low on oil for a long period of time. So it looks like the engine is now spinning freely, and the only thing we have to worry about is how much damage this engine might have sustained after running for a long period of time without the correct amount of oil in the engine. The easiest way for me to find out is to use a compression tester. Now, you can find these online for less than $20, and it will measure how much pressure your engine can make on the compression stroke. We want to see a reading well over 100 psi, and the higher the better. Anything lower than 100 just means the engine is worn to some extent. We do not want to see a reading less than 50 psi. Before we can do our compression test, I need to install a pull handle. Now, I do have a spare handle from another machine that I'm going to use. That way we don't have to buy a new one. Is it a cost issue? Possibly, but I don't like throwing something away that is still useful. Now, the rope is a bit thicker than the one that was in the handle originally, but it should still work. If you don't have a used handle available, or you don't want to buy one, just be resourceful and use something else. Whatever it might be, I probably wouldn't use anything made out of metal, as it could hurt your hand. With the repurposed pull handle on the rope, the only thing we need to take care of is the extra rope hanging out of the recoil. On this type of engine, the handle is meant to be up against the recoil, so that means we need to put 1 or 2 more turns on the recoil spring. I'll start with 1 turn. If there's still some rope hanging out, I'll add another turn. Just be careful, because if you add too many turns, the spring might bind up when you pull on the rope. Now, after the extra rope is gone, pull on the rope a few times and make sure it's working smoothly. We can then put the recoil assembly back onto the engine. We're almost ready to use our compression tester, but we also don't want to forget to add more oil to the engine, otherwise the same thing might happen again. I really don't like telling people how much oil to put into their engine. I just tell them to add a little bit at a time and use the dipstick to let them know when it's full. It's okay if the oil is just over the H mark, but if you put too much oil in, just tip the mower over a little bit to get the extra oil out. This is the first time I've been able to pull the engine over with the rope, and it actually feels like there's some compression from the engine. It doesn't seem to have been damaged at all from overheating. The next thing I want to do is remove the spark plug and install the compression tester. After that, just pull the rope several times or until the needle won't go any higher on the tester. Now, looking at the spark plug, the tip is a light brown color, which is what I want, although the gap is a bit larger than I would like. If we need to, we might replace the spark plug later on. It doesn't have to be an OEM spark plug, but I do prefer them no matter what brand it is. So the reading is about 92 psi, which sounds low. However, more than likely this engine has a compression release to make pulling the rope a lot easier. This would also give us a lower than normal reading when using the rope to pull the engine over. To get a real reading, use a drill to turn the engine over faster than using the pull rope. This should override the compression release and give you a true reading. Now that we know this engine has decent compression, we might as well try starting it. The good news is that the engine started on the second pull and that it was running great. However, since I didn't let the engine warm up, and I also had the engine speed set to medium instead of fast, when I engaged the blades, the engine died. I'll start the engine again, and this time I'll keep the engine speed high when engaging the blades. Hopefully, it won't die on me. So this time the engine started and ran just fine, and while leaving the throttle on high, the blades did engage and worked just like they were supposed to. I then decided to test the self-propel system, but unfortunately the engine died, which I wasn't expecting. It turns out that I left the fuel valve in the off position, so it just ran out of gas, but at least we know the engine works. It doesn't appear that the self-propel system was going to work anyway because the cable for it is missing. It looks as though the cable broke and they just removed the inner part of the cable because the outer part of the cable is still there. This is when we see yet another issue. The speed selector seems to be stuck in first gear, which is quite slow for most people. If we get the self-propel working again, it might not even be used because it'll be too slow. That means we might have to replace two cables, but there's no guarantees that the transmission is working either. Another reason why this engine might have locked up is that there's gasoline in the oil. This would thin the oil out and make it less effective. The most likely way for this to happen is that the carburetor is leaking gas into the engine. The fix for this is to replace the carburetor and do an oil change. However, it's also possible that the bottom end of the engine is already severely damaged. So my question is, what should we do with this mower? Should we try and fix the self-propel system, or just leave it like it is? Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope to see you in the next video.